So go back. Let's go back to when you were younger and how the passion for writing kind of got ignited. Um, I read a little bit about it, and I listened to it with a British accent. I just want you to know that. So your little bio, I put it on 11 Reader. It's a little AI reader, and there was a British woman reading it, so you sounded very British. But I would love to hear it from you, and if you want to just tell us a little bit about how that started.
Yeah, so I started writing, like really taking my debut series, the Midori Chronicles. I started actually drafting the idea for that at around probably, I think it was like 11 or 12.
Okay.
I had just seen the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, and I absolutely loved it because the dragons were different than anything I had seen before. They were like companions, but they weren't really pets. So I liked that. I liked that relationship between Toothless and Hiccup, and I was like, "Oh, I wanna write something like that." And I had written little short stories before, so I already loved to I already loved creative writing. So this was kind of like a natural transition to actually, like,
Right.
finding, like, my own topic. Because before then, it was a bunch of really weird fan fiction spawned from, like, 3 AM with my so none of it made sense, and my youngest brothers actually still read it to this day for laugh.
Didn't you write? Was it Clone Wars fiction
Yes,
fanfic?
so yeah, it was mainly Clone Wars fan fiction, and then How to Train Your Dragon, I did a couple of them, and then a mishmash fan fiction that was basically a challenge between me and my siblings. How many movie characters could we cram into one setting? There wasn't even a plot. It was just like cameos of like other characters hopping into like this restaurant or something, and then just absolute nonsense. So, once I had an actual idea for a dragon story of a kid who at the time was like my age, was gonna be like 12, and then her dragon, um, it just kind of evolved as I wrote. Because like, "Oh, but I also really love Narnia, and I love, how we have characters from our world which can be relatable as characters to people from Earth to relate to, but
Mhm.
have the fantasy setting of a fantasy world." I loved that combination. So I married that with the dragon writer, dragon tamer genre. And that was the very beginnings of what would be the Tidora Chronicles. And obviously things changed. As I grew older, Melanie kept aging up with me because she started off as kind of a self-insert. Um, but then she became her own character, and then I added Jason, so then we would have both a female and a male protagonist just for more reach and relatability to readers of, both sexes.
Mhm.
And it took me over 10 years to actually get it to where I was happy publishing it, and that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Well, kind of reeling it back to your characters, I do like the positive sibling relationship. They're friends. I like the family. This is very simple and it's very early, but they sit down for family dinner, and I just appreciate that. So thank you for writing that kind of background.
That was something very important to me whenever I was first writing it. Like, not at first. At first, I made the 2 of them just absolute jerks to each other because that's how every fictional sibling seemed to behave, like, just really nasty, negative to each other in, like, under the guise of being funny,
Yeah.
and I felt like, "Oh, well, in order to appeal to people who are used to that, I should probably write the same way." While I was writing those early versions, I would actually sit my family down and I would read or actually have my mom read from the laptop, read chapters every night or chapters that I finished and read them to the family as, like family story time, which was great. But as like we were reading it, my mom would like read it out loud and she'd just kind of pause and be like, "They're kind of mean to each other." And I was like, "Yeah, why can't they be nice?" And I was like, "Why can't they be nice? I can do whatever I want." So that kind of really like lit like a light bulb on me. And I'm like, I can do whatever they want. And I realized I hadn't really seen a lot of super positive family relationships in recent media of the time. And I was like, I want to be different than that. For one, I'm going to go against like what's normal and actually have, you know, siblings who actually like each other and have parents who are still together and are either not divorced, not dead, which which is already deviating from the young adult protagonist. Like I really wanted to make that just something in there to be a little bit different. So that was really important to me was just to have a healthy family dynamic in a time where a lot of family portrayals are broken um and just kind of dysfunctional. So then Jason and Melanie became nice and we're buddies. So
I do wanna say they're still siblings. They still jab at each other a little bit. So it feels you still kinda have that energy, but overall, I can just tell, like I said, I don't even know, what is that, 70 or 80 pages into the book, but you can tell that in general, they've got each other's backs.
mhm,
They love each other. They care about each other. They're willing to help each other. They trust each other.
mhm.
And it's a positive relationship. So
Yeah, the
that's
root
great.
definitely the root of down to like there is some obviously some sibling teasing, but it's not supposed to be hurtful. And it's more like lighthearted, like, yeah, they're teasing, but deep down, you can still tell through it all, they really do love each other, where in some things, it's like they're just so nasty to each other. I'm like, "Do you actually even love each other? I bet if the villain asked, you would sell out your sibling." Like, I'm not
Yeah.
buying, "Oh, but he's my brother and I love him." Like, you haven't shown any of that. So
I feel like what you see a lot of is just shallow, and I don't know about siblings in general, but relationships in general in media, in my opinion, you'd see a lot of shallow relationships. So if you've got the teasing, you don't have the depth beneath it where you know that they would love each other. I do want to share another experience that's fairly similar. So with my first book, um, I had swearing in it. Well, I sent it to a pastor to edit. There, Peter Lundell was his name, and I found him on Reedsy, and he was just doing a line edit. And he said, I can see where you're going with this. I respect what you're doing. He's like, but are the curse words really necessary? But it was the same thing you just described, where I'm like, you know what? No, the curse words aren't necessary. And so I took them all out, and my book wasn't hurt by it. It's incredible. And then I'm very proud of it now. I'm like, yeah, you can read this and you don't need to worry about F-bombs getting dropped out of nowhere. And Tolkien wasn't dropping F-bombs. A lot of people like his stuff.
that would was definitely something that I didn't want to do. Like, I wanted it to be clean. I mean, there are some as the books get on, the violence kinda gets a little bit higher, but I hope that it's not like Quentin Tarantino or anything like that. But that I think violence is the most subjective thing when it comes to like, oh, what's like clean and what's like, what's kid friendly and what's more on like the more mature side. But sexuality and language are very easily defined, which neither of which I have in my books.
I had a few things I wanted to get your thoughts on. One of which this will make people mad no matter what we say, was AI. Because I remember one of the things I remember seeing you post was that you found that your book had been read by AI or something? Like, you found your book had been used in an AI trainer? I'm just interested because it's something that I'm trying to navigate. I've used AI for, like, character art and stuff, and I'm pulling back and getting more and more hesitant on it. So what happened with that, and what do you think about AI?
So first, I pretty much despise AI. I let me back up. I despise generative AI.
Mhm.
So basically, type in a prompt and spit out a product because most of the time, people's work that gets trained on, they're not compensated for. So there's like a creative copyright infringement, which leads me to the AI book training database. So there was a large language model training on all of these works, and I believe there was, like, something like 7 million books in this database,
Wow.
and, I was able to search on somebody built an engine that was connected to the database that you could search to see if your book was on there, and my book was on there. So, when people found out
How did it get on there? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how did it get on there? Did it buy your book?
I don't believe it bought my book, so I think pretty much all of the works were pirated. Eventually people found out and were really, really upset, especially the authors. So a lawsuit was brought forward And recently, the lawsuit had reached a settlement where if your book was found on the database and had been copyrighted via the actual like copyright department or office, then you could get up to $3,000 in compensation per work. So I was like, okay, great, 3 grand, that's awesome. But my book didn't make the cut for compensation, even though it was used because I didn't go through the official copyright channels. So yes, it's copyrighted by like just existing. I think that's called like intellectual copyright. But if you want like an actual documentation, official form or whatever, you actually have to pay the copyright office to get that done. I didn't get any compensation for my book being used.
What does the intellectual copyright get you then? Does it just get you that they have to remove it or something?
I really don't know if it I don't know a lot about copyright laws. I probably should know
Yeah.
more than I do, especially after this incident, but I think it just protects you from like somebody stealing your idea.
Does that mean you reject generative AI, like, in principle, always? Or do you think like, is there any caveat to that, or you just don't use it as a matter of principle?
I don't use it on a matter of principle. It's kind of like a blanket. I feel like um so before I did use it in the very beginning when it was kind of like the new hot thing that came out, but then once I figured out all of the potential ethical violations behind it, I didn't do it anymore.
My sister's a Catholic artist, and she's got an Etsy shop, and I know she's been hurt by AI. Yeah, and that's I appreciate your perspective. So, a couple of years ago, I generated a bunch of character art, and it took a long time, but I'm sitting here thinking I can get it to do the right style I want, and I could get the characters to look exactly like I want. And I thought it was really cool, and I posted it. I was excited about it. Here recently, though, like last week, I actually removed the link to all. I had a bunch of AI images like showing off my imagination. And one of the lines I always drew was, "I'm never going to profit from this. Like, I'm never going to use it for my cover. I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going to sell a bookmark. I'm never going to sell art." But more and more recently, I mean, it's getting harder for me to defend to the point where I don't know that I can anymore. Even just like posting, I still like mess around with it. I think it's kind of fun sometimes, but it's it's removing the human element. Well, it's robbing the human element from art
Hmm.
and then generating art without the human element, which to me is what gives art its value. Like it's the soul that creates the art that makes the art worth something. So you're really just getting a Frankenstein, right? You're getting a an imitation that is in fact pushing out real artists and limiting the expression of real art. And so that bothers me a lot. And especially now, like in 5 years, are we really not going to have completely AI written novels that are being sold in stores? I feel like we're going to. They just had a song. There's some country song. It's high up on some chart, but it's completely AI generated. AI
Yeah.
singer, AI song, and people are buying it. People are paying money for it. So of course people are going to leverage AI, and of course that's going to end up hurting real artists. And I think that's a shame. And with literature, like when it starts happening, because like I said, I think it will, you're gonna lose some connection to souls that create art. Society will lose that, which is bad for society. It like drains the life out of society.
There
So
are some AI generated books, like front, like cover to cover is completely AI generated. Somebody bought an ebook of some romance novel and they found that the chat GPT prompt was left in. It
uh,
wasn't forgot to take it out when they were editing it. And there's
uh,
so much AI on Kickstarter, which is where I go for like all of my author peers. If they launch special editions, I'll go to there and back them. And as I'm active on Kickstarter, Kickstarter will recommend me. Here's some other crowdfunding you like. I might have liked them, but I see the AI covers for like the whole series, and I'm just like, you're already raising money for the book. Why not just tie in the cost to hire a human artist
mhm.
instead of like keeping all of the profits to yourself and just doing AI for all of it? Like,
Yeah.
anyway, I, yeah, my My opinion is I do not like generative AI. There are some uses AI can be used for, but generative AI for literature, art is not it.
Yeah, I like I said, it's getting harder and harder for me, and I made some really cool stuff. I animated some of the character art I have, and it looks awesome.
I'm
So
not potential readers that just get so mad and like start dissing on
uh,
every post just because you posted something that's AI. You're gonna bring
yeah,
in all of the studies, and then the algorithms will be like, "This is an anti-AI post. Let's share it with more people who hate AI." And then you just reach the wrong audience, and then it's just a lot of activity on your posts. Like, this is not what I wanted,
yeah.
but just a lot of witch hunts nowadays, especially with the rise of Sora.
Is that okay? What's Sora? I've heard it, and I don't. I'm kind of living under a rock sometimes.
Yeah, so Sora is the latest generative AI video model.
Uh,
So not only does it generate consistent, very convincing imagery, but it's also generating all of the sound as well. There's a ton of people using like celebrities and
uh,
political figures and newscasters to say things in a very convincing way. Like there's hardly any tells. You wouldn't be able to tell unless you
mhm,
actually tried to find the raw footage. On the more positive side, it was either created for people who wanted to a quick way to get art without, breaking their personal budget. But on the bad side of the spectrum, it's, based on like the news and politics and world leaders doing things that they might not have done, or good people doing bad things and where they won't be trusted anymore, maybe like church leaders or something like really damaging to the reputation. And it's just like we're reaching a point, even now, we're reaching a point where everybody's starting to question. There's always the ever present question in the back of their mind of seeing a video, is this AI? Because of
mhm.
how convincing the latest models, particularly Sora, is.
I was talking about this at work, and one of the things we talked about was the exponential pace. So I didn't know exactly what Sora was. So thank you for explaining that to me. But I'm very familiar with these new AI videos that you cannot tell that it's not real. It's this thing where once again, I'm like stopping short of wholesale condemnation because intrinsically is it wrong to like use it? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, but it's definitely going to be used by people for nefarious purposes, as you said. It's definitely going to be used to manipulate people for personal gain from people that are not looking out for your best interest,
Yeah.
to sway public opinion. And is the net going to be positive from AI? It's really hard for me to think that. I'm really big on silence. So if you listen to me talk for more than about 10 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about how silence is really important. And, noise is one thing, but noise when you can't trust any of it is that's a whole nother level of something straight from the pits of hell, if you will.
Yeah.
Not to be a curmudgeon again, but oh man, it's scary, and raising kids in it. Our kids we're gonna have to figure out how do we have our kids navigate all of that. It's a very unique challenge because it's not something we had to go through, right? So we didn't grow up having to navigate an AI filled world where you don't know what's real and what's not. So it's
Yeah.
harder as a parent to teach your kids about that. So writing is great. Writing's a passion, but family comes first. You've got multiple kids. You're married, and yet you're still doing this. So, how's that transition been? Like, describe to me the differences in how you've had to approach writing as you've grown your family.
Yes. So I wouldn't say it's balance that a parent has to find for their hobbies because that kind of alludes to a stagnancy almost. It's more of like navigation, which implies you're always moving in some directions. For me, obviously my vocation as a wife and mother come first and foremost. And having kids that are getting older and they're getting into more things and require a little bit more attention,
Hmm.
and that has kind of overtaken any free time I have for writing. And at first, I was kind of frustrated with it. I'm like, why can't you just take a nap? Because for some reason, my kids don't really take naps. So there's always going to be one kid awake. And when they're by themselves, if somebody else is sleeping, and they're going to be like, hey, I want attention from you, mom. And I'm like, of course. But at the same time, there is that desire to I just wish I could have some time for my book. But that comes with being a parent is that you have to make
Mhm.
little sacrifices along the way. So right now, I haven't been able to find a good writing schedule or like a writing groove, and I don't think I've ever really had one since having kids. I in the when I had when my kids were younger and I had fewer, then I was able to wake up really early in the morning, which for me was like 6, and then I had maybe about an hour and a half of book time, whether that was drafting or editing or revising. I had an hour and a half in the morning to be able to knock that out. And that was great. That was my schedule. And then the second kid came along, and, when they're little, they sleep most of the time. But then they hit the point where they start to get mobile, and then they're like, and
Yes.
then my schedule had kind of shifted to just be more present and watching them and parenting them. And since then, it's just find any spare moment where the rare times that all of them do take a nap, or maybe they're content watching a movie. They're not really huge into screens. The stuff that they watch is the stuff that I grew up with, which is very low stimulation. So their current obsession, I think, is Kipper the dog and Harold and the Purple Crayon. So that's been my saving grace for a little bit, to get to buy me some time to edit. But then we moved,
Mhm.
and it's just been kind of on the wayside since. But I wouldn't say that I have a regiment for writing as a parent. It's just take care of your kids first, do what your God given vocation is, put that as a priority, and then do that well. And then you'll start to find little pockets of time being granted to you. um, the better that you steward your time and your vocation.
Sometimes I feel like whenever I read writing advice or you get on Instagram, or it almost seems like, and maybe I'm being too judgy, but it almost seems like it's too much of an obsession for people. And I fight that. I fight it becoming too big, like an idol, right? Like
Yes.
writing, success at writing.
Ugh,
Um,
big yes, same here.
yeah, so it is a challenging thing, and if you're approaching writing as a sort of calling, or even if you're just doing it for fun, it's probably going to be better if you subordinate that to your primary calling, right? Which for you, wife and a mother. So I think
Mhm.
that's beautiful. Do you think there's going to have to be a pause at some point? Are you going to finish book 3, get it out there? You think you're going to take a break, or
I feel like once I find the pocket of time to start to actually dive into my manuscripts and look at my feedback from my betas, I think that will
Mhm.
kinda start motivation again, just to I've been away from it for long enough where coming back in can rekindle that excitement and the love for my work, and will fuel the motivation it takes to actually finish the book. And then once I have that motivation and passion again, I'll want to keep writing after that. I have ideas for more stories, so I definitely want to keep writing. And um, I think it's just a matter of maybe just some of these days I'll just have to stay up late, which I used to be good at. If my books mean enough to me, then I will end up doing what it takes to get them out and share them with everybody else.
Well, I know we've gone a little long, and I can't say thank you enough. I've really enjoyed the conversation. So tell anybody listening how to follow you. And I know you got a Kickstarter. So how do we find that?
Yes, so I can be found on Instagram and Facebook at hannahpennington.author. And my books are also on Amazon. My ebooks are on Kindle Unlimited. And Um, I do have a Kickstarter, which will be to not only launch book 3, but also provide special editions of the whole trilogy. So they'll have exclusive cover art and in-book annotations, which is kind of like the book with the director's cut, if you will. And that Kickstarter can be found just by Googling the Tandoori Chronicles on the Kickstarter website. Um, and that will launch sometime in 2026.